Hi everyone, welcome to another Community Tech Talk from Wallaroo, and really great to have you again here. And we keep these running every 2 weeks, and we do record them. So if you have to leave early or you missed this one and you're watching us on YouTube, thanks very much, and I encourage you to look at the other content that we have. Today we are going to cover using APIs in ML production. And this is a great way in which folks that are been through that ideation, been through that testing phase, and are ready to get into production. How do they authenticate and use that API to get them into production and get that project moving in the right direction. And so we'll go through authentication of using API, using tokens, how to issue requests and process the responses, and then what to do with different data types as well. As we all know that, there's different data types that are used in that ideation experimentation phase, and how do we make sure that there's continuity as we go into production. My name is Martin Bald. I'm the community manager at Wallaroo, and you probably see me on other videos. Not trying to be the, hey, I'm Troy McClure. You may know me from other sessions such as. But yeah, my goal is to reach out to you, the ML ops practitioner, whether you're a data scientist, ML engineer, or DevOps, or whether you're transitioning into this space as well. We have a bunch of content, great content on our YouTube channel to help you build those skills. We have great tutorials written by my colleague who will introduce himself in a second. And we also have a free community edition, which you can download and get that hands-on scaling for getting those models into production. Just going to hand it over to my colleague now. John, do you want to take it away?
Yes, hello. I'm John Handrick. I'm a senior technical writer here in Wallaroo. So that means I get the privilege of working with Martin and making the tutorials, documenting the reference guides and the like. By the way, I've actually literally got a bulldozer in front of my place right now, plowing the street right in front of me. So if you start hearing beeps and crashes, that's probably what that is. So hopefully they'll let us be. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen here. So Martin, if you can give me control, or do you want to go over this chart real quick and then I'll take charge?
Yeah, just quickly, because we had a great question on one of our previous sessions, and it was a great question. The person's like, "Oh, this is fantastic. What do you guys do?" So, and we're like, "Oh yeah, we should probably tell you who we are and what we do." So, yeah, Wallaroo are a Series A startup. We are funded by the Microsoft M12 group, and what we do is we are a ML production platform, and so we help you get your projects and those models into production, and not just into production, but making sure that they are sustainable, that they return that ROI back to the business through the capabilities of making sure that that inferencing and running off those, whether it's in batch or streaming mode, is super fast. Also giving you ability to observe through tools such as drift detection and other observability, and then also optimize those models. So you can do things like A/B testing, shadow deploy, hot swap models in flight while you're in production without taking that whole environment down. And the other part, which we'll sort of touch on an aspect of today with APIs, is that we plug into those existing tools and investments that you've made already, whether it be we run on AWS, we run on Azure and GCP, and if you've made investments in Databricks, Snowflake, Grafana, etc., we plug in, via an SDK, and we also have a UI platform capability as well. So that's who we are, so we'll cover these things in this tutorial: how to authenticate, issue these requests, and so on. So I'll hand it over to John now. So off you go, John.
Okay, all right. Yeah, do you want? Okay, there we go. I'll take the screen then. I have the con. All right, so you should be able to see my screen now. So yeah, this is the same slideshow that Mr. Ball is working on. So as mentioned earlier, I'm the senior technical writer, so I get to play with all these cool tools and tell other people how to use them. What we're going to cover today is focus on APIs. So as a reference, in the past, I've talked about using like the Walroo SDK for things. So something that you put into your local environment with your libraries, in this case, Python, you can issue commands and then those commands go off and they go do things. So the API does in the same way, but the difference is with the API, really, it's all HTTP based. The official definition is that an API is a set of endpoints allow external systems. It boils down to send HTTP, get HTTP, or in this case, HTTPS, get it back. Now, how you're doing that depends on what you're sending, but most of the time the methods are the same. So we're going to show how we're using things in Walroo, but really you can extrapolate this to just about any other API that you're using. So let's give a quick example of how this would work out. So in this case, we want to say create a workspace in a Walroo instance. So we've got our command, which is workspaces create. We got some data, and then we're gonna, in this case, this is using a Python library request, but you can be using curl, you can be using JavaScript, whatever it is. There's some great applications such as Postman. Insomnia is I think it's still open source. It may start going to a pay model. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on that. But the fact is, because this is all HTTP, you don't have to sit there and be like, oh, I've got to install this different stuff. Just take your HTTP requests and use them. So in this case, we're saying, hey, I'm going to make a post request. I'm going to point it at this server. I'm going to send it some JSON, which is this data field that you can see there. Headers, we're going over that in a moment. And the response back, I want it back as a take this JSON and view it. So it packages that up, sends it up to the Walroo. In this case, the Walroo instance, it hits that HTTP endpoint and says, hey, I'm giving you this data at this point, and in this header information is authentication. So it knows who we are. Like I said, we'll go over that in a moment. The backslash API does its thing, gets its response, sends it back. In this case, it's a JSON object, and then we take that and we go and do other things. So fairly simple example, but you can start to build from there. So let's talk real quick about authentication. Different methods of authentication. We're going to focus on tokens, and we're going to show two types. So in each case, we're going to use what's called a confidential client. And I'm actually going to jump ahead a little bit to about here. Now, that's the next slide. So a confidential client is basically saying, hey, server, I have this secret. There's a secret that you and I both share. In this case, it's this user called API client. And the secret, which is this code here, don't steal it. I've already reset it. It's too late. You can't hack into my Walroo instance. But when I submit this, I'm telling the server end, hey, here's the secret information so you know that I'm legit. Now, from this point, there's a couple different ways where we can do things. I'm going to show both. This just kind of gives us a basic authorization. So that's what we're getting in from there. And if we want, we can then proceed on and say, now, not only do I know the secret, I'm now going to authenticate as this specific user. So first I'm saying, all right, so here's some code here. We're saying, hey, here's where I'm connecting with. In this case, we're talking to the Keycloak service in Walroo. And that's another, I believe that's an open source service that you can use. But we're saying, hey, I know this secret. I know its credentials. Now I am, in this case, Mary Jane. And to prove that I'm Mary Jane, here's my password, Snuggle Bunnies. So, and we package all that up and we send it, and it sends back two things. It gives us an access token, which depending on the instance, in our case, it lasts about 60 minutes. And then it gives us what's called a refresh token that says, hey, when this token expires, you can just resubmit this refresh token with some basic credentials, and that authentication token can keep going. So in this case, we are authenticating ourselves as this particular user. Now, the other method just uses the basics. It just says, hey, I just got the confidential client. I just got a secret. It'll still give you a token, but it's a token that's not tied to any particular user. So in both cases, we have a method of authentication, who we are. One actually just says, hey, you know that I can talk to you because I've got the secrets. The other one says, not only can I talk to you, I am talking to you as this person. I'm proving who I say I am. So from there, you can start to do things with that. So Martin, any questions on that so far, or?
And no, I think that the one thing it's always good to clarify is, with folks is, people get confused. If I authenticate, that why can't I get access to this certain, content or things like that? And so, yeah, is there a difference, or do you want to explain the difference between authentication and then authorization? Because I have seen a lot of folks get confused about that in the past.
Yeah, no, that's fair. So authentication proves who I am. So in this case, in this example, I'm saying I am Mary Jane at example.com and that I'm using a password. So this just tells the other instance, here's who I am. That doesn't define what I can do. So in this case, if we authenticate, say, as this user here, which is really a non-user, it's just like a basic thing. Okay, you can get in. Your level of what you can do, your authorization is very limited. So like in this, we've set up in Walrus, for example, that if you just get in, you can do an inference, and that's all you can do. You can't make workspaces. You can't make pipelines, so on and so forth. Mary Jane over here, on the other hand, could probably do that. She could create workspaces, she could create, pipelines, she could upload models, she could do all these other things. But then we can take it one step further and say, well, she can then add someone to a workspace, and now their authorization allows them to do things in a workspace. Until they do, they can authenticate themselves, but they can't touch what she's done until they give her until she gives them the authorization to do so. So it's who are you and what are you allowed to do? So that's kind of that distinction that I try to draw in there.
Yeah, so that's great. Yeah, and
Okay.
it's a great thing to call out. Like I said, I've seen, people think, hey, I just logged in with, why can't I access this thing, right? And so
Yeah.
a great thing to call out and clarify.
Yeah, I call it kind of like, imagine like a bank. I can authenticate that I'm John Handrick, but that's not going to give me authorization to Martin Ball's bank account.
Yeah, yeah. No, there's nothing there.
Not yet. Okay, that's fine. I feel that. Okay, so let's go to the next thing, which is headers. So before, when we showed this sample in here, you can see we have this part here called headers. So headers is information where we're telling the server in. There we go. We're telling the server, hey, here's the information I'm sending you before I get to the actual data that I care about. So the first one we're telling it is authorization. So this is telling it, hey, I'm going to prove who I say I am, so I can do things. And what it's using in the case of Walrus is what's called the bearer tokens. We're telling it, hey, I'm going to authorize myself with this bearer token. Here's the token. Now, in this case, this is what was retrieved in this step up here. So this access token, I would literally just take that and pop that into my authorization header. All right. Then you've got the content type. Here's what I'm sending you. So this could be, in this case, most of these commands will be application JSON. Hey, I'm going to send you some JSON information so you can do something. If I'm sending, say, a data type, I can tell it, hey, I'm going to send you JSON, but I'm doing it in the pandas record format. So that's another content type. Or I could say, hey, I'm going to upload you a file, and it's an Apache Arrow file. There's other upload types, application octet stream. I'm just going to give you a binary file. You'll know what to do with it. Here it is. It can be just about anything. And the expectation is that the server will know what to do with it. There's also what's called multi-part form data. So you can say like, hey, I'm going to send you some data and some binary. It's multi-part. So the content type lets the server know, here's what you're going to get. And depending on what you want, may determine what you can send. So for example, if I'm giving a command like create a user, probably going to be application JSON. I'm not going to send an Apache arrow table file for that. If I'm doing an inference request, most likely it's expecting, very specific things. So check with the API because it'll tell you this is what the content type should be. And the last thing we're going to discuss today, and there's many, many different types of headers, but the third one that we focus on is accept. What am I getting back? So in this case, if I send a command and I'm uploading application JSON as the data, I want back JSON. Give me back, what did you do in a JSON format? Another way, for example, again, if I'm doing like an inference request, I may submit JSON in pandas record format, and I want that back in the same way, or vice versa. I may send it an Apache Arrow table file and tell it, hey, when you give me back the response, I want to accept it as this. Again, check with the API because it'll actually say these are the type of accepts that we'll do. So we got how are we authenticating and authorizing ourselves? It's part of the header. What are we sending in the other part of the header? And what are we receiving in the third part of the header? All right. So the next part is the actual request. So this is where we're telling it, all right, this is the part of the we're going to touch. Think of it like a web page. If you go to, say, CNN, you might go to cnn.com/economics, and that's a different page than cnn.com/sports. So in this case, usually the commands are in the form of a noun verb. So we have most of the time it'll be something /API. For example, in our case, it's like awesome narwhal 420.api.walru.dev. So it tells us, all right, here's where the API service is sitting, and I'm going to give it what command I want to issue. Usually it's noun verb, so models upload, pipelines create, so on and so forth. And then many APIs will have a document reference in what's called an open API format. So for example, if I go to, say, our server we're playing with today and go to this address, these are all the things I can do. That's most of the time people are nice to put that in, but then you can go in there and see, okay, so this guy here accepts a control header, accepts application JSON, this is what it sends back, so on and so forth.
Can you make that a wee bit bigger, John? Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's fine.
Just,
yeah, so in this case, it's the request is like, all right, what am I sending? I'm sending JSON. What are you getting back? I'm getting back JSON. And again, for most APIs that are just basic commands, that's what you can see. Other times, I think, for example, if I go to models, there we go. So I upload a model. Here it wants multi-part form data. So it's saying, hey, give me these different things, and it says, what to do. And then in our case, we're also showing, hey, here's some examples of what that may look like. So we'll go into more detail, but that's usually how it works. So, so again, you've got your API, the main URL that you're using, and then whatever the command format is. In our case, that's v1/API/ and then the final command, which is all of these things in here. v1 API models upload, as I mentioned earlier. Essays list. So again, it's usually noun verb. Not always. And some people can just go off the rails and do all sorts of stuff. So check with their docs. Okay. So from here, I'm actually going to split off in just a moment after I show this. And I'm actually going to show a demonstration of using, in this case, the Walru API to do all these things. So let's go ahead and shift over here. So this is a tutorial that we have in our tutorials repository in GitHub. And rather than going through all the depths of this, I'm just going to mainly focus on what we're looking at doing. So let me just load up some of these libraries real quick and make sure I've got all my things in place. And yep, I do. Okay. Okay, so in a moment here, we should see some errors, but that's okay because I expect some things until I actually tell it. So let me just clear this out and we should be good there. Okay, so let's go ahead and start off with this. And why am I not connecting? Oh, I think I know why. It's because this user does not, that user should exist. Oh, one last thing here.
Yeah, if you can make that a wee bit bigger as well, that'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, this should be bigger too. That's because this, turn that off real quick. We don't need this part here. Okay, so let me clear that out real quick. Sorry, usually this is running within the instance, so let me actually add myself in real quick here. That's the right one. So we're doing this on the fly. I'd forgotten I had reset this for another reason. I forgot to add in my stuff. So I'm sorry,
That's okay.
Mr. Ball, that Okay,
Yeah,
let
it's
me
good
just
to
get
see live coding. Let's see you. You're
what?
the master at work.
Oh, really? Is that what we're calling it now? Ah, there we go. Okay, there we go. So in this case, I'm cheating a little bit and I'm setting up this connection, and then this should do it from here. So one last thing. Yeah, that should be good. Okay, so let me just authenticate real quick, and then we'll show everything else from there. So as mentioned earlier, you're usually going to have some sort of an API endpoint. So in this case, this is my doc test, which is the first part of my URL.api. And if we go back to my browser, showing earlier, that's what we're seeing up here, is just that particular endpoint. All right. So in this case, we're going to use the Waller SDK to get our tokens. Just kind of blaze through this real quick. But remember, I mentioned earlier that authorization and the bearer token. So that's what that looks like there. This is being auto-generated for me. So now we can actually go through some commands. So in this case, we're like, all right, we got our first header, which is our bearer token stuff. To that header, we're going to add an extra spot, application JSON. Here's what I'm going to submit the data as. I don't have to tell it that I'm accepting as JSON as well. It already knows. So I can just start going down the list. I'm going to issue it a command with this data to workspaces create. I'm going to tell it, all right, here's my workspace name and including the variable, and then it will just go. So this is like, great, I made your workspace. In this case, now we're going to upload a model. So you recall this is in multi-part form data. That's the default method for Python requests. So I don't have to tell it that content type. We're going to do the same thing. I'm going to get my authentication header, going to give it the command models upload. I'm telling it, all right, I'm calling it by this name, setting the visibility, and giving it the workspace ID that I just created earlier. And if we went to our doc system in here and said, all right, what do I need for model upload? That's exactly what we needed. The name, the visibility, and the workspace ID. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's like, okay, I did it, and there's your thing. Now I'm storing this information for later steps. In fact, let me clear all the outputs there. So now we can get the details of that model I just uploaded. So again, noun, verb. I'm going to take the ID that I got, and I'm going to submit it and get some more information. So now we can start to chain these things together. I've got information, I'm going to get more information. Submit the versions of this model. Now I think I'm only going to have one. Yeah, I've only uploaded it once, so it's just going to give me the first one, and I'll store that. So let me just go through some of these real quick, because most of these are some other commands that you'll go along with. So deploy a pipeline, again, content type, pipeline deploy noun verb. Here's all of our data we're going to send up, and then we get some sort of response back. So the last thing I'm going to do is we're going to have to wait about a little bit while that pipeline deploys. It's doing things in the background. Is I'm going to then show, once that's finished, I'll just blaze in on this, submitting some data. So I talked earlier about content types. In this case, we're sending it, hey, I'm going to give you JSON in this format. So once we do, and here's that data, again, it's JSON data. It's just in the pandas record format. So we're going to submit it. Since I'm getting back a pandas table, I'm like, great. When you get it back, turn that response I'm going to get, which is JSON, and then wrap it around a pandas data frame. Once everything's ready, let's see how far our deployment is. All right, there it goes. And then boom, we get a response. And then same thing here. We're going to get our authorization. Hey, I'm going to send you an Apache arrow table file. By default, this would give me back JSON in pandas format. I'm going to tell it, no, I want to accept an Apache table as well. So in this case, I'm going to get back this object. This will be an Apache arrow table. And I'm like, great. Once I get it, wrap it up in an actual arrow table, and then turn to a pandas data frame and show it. And there we go. So that, I think, kind of concludes everything, Martin. I'm going to issue this last command for my environment so I get back those resources. But that takes us through authentication, different types and different styles. It shows how to submit a request to an API, how to submit that API with different data types depending on what you're doing, how to receive back that data, and how to determine here's the kind of data that I accept back. So most APIs are going to be the same thing. We've got more documentation about how the Wallaroo MLOps API works for those who want to look into it. And I'll let Martin, I think, show the last slides for references. But there you are. I think that's kind of covers everything.
Awesome. Thank you, John. It's fantastic as always. And yeah, as John mentioned, we've got a lot of content up here. And so if you do want to dig deeper into that documentation, you can see that link here. And what I will do in the recording is I'll share this deck in the, once I upload it to YouTube, I'll share this in the description so folks can have access to this deck and, go through, the code snippets and so on. And also you can actually go through this yourself we have the free community edition, and that's it doesn't expire. You can download this, set it up and run through not only this tutorial, but there's a whole bunch of other tutorials that you can go through to get hands-on into ML production. As I talked about, observability, making sure, checking drift detection. You can optimize through shadow deploy, A/B testing, and then also do that hot swapping feature as well that I talked about at the beginning, all in a production environment as well. So yeah, go have a look at this and the other tutorials that are available there, and I'll get this recording up on the session today. John, thank you again very much for your time and expertise and walking us through this. It's always great to have you on our Tech Talks and really appreciate it. So
glad to help. And don't forget, folks, like, comment, subscribe, click that notification bell. Did I miss anything on YouTube? Is there anything else they need to do on that, or is that everything?
Yeah, I think that's it, right. I think I don't want to go through what the influencers go with. Smash that like button,
Oh gosh.
And so on. But yeah, as I said, I really appreciate everyone's time and investigating our content. So it's great. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. It's martin.ball@wallaroo.ai, or you can reach us through our community. It's community@wallaroo.ai as well. And so, happy to chat and connect with folks in this space and see, what other content can we do that, you want to see. And with that, I'll let you go. Thanks very much. Appreciate your time. Again, John, have a good day, and I'll talk to you soon, okay? Bye-bye.
All right, catch you soon.